Chapter 30 Immortality of the Soul. We are spirits in a material world. Sting. The difference between spirit, soul, and body. In textbooks on psychology, there is a difference between the brain and the mind. It is not known exactly what mind is, only that it exists. To correlate scientific and religious terminology, we can swap the word mind for spirit and vice versa. Spirit may refer to the Holy Spirit of God and also appears to be synonymous with the universal life force or breath of life. The English word spirit comes from the Latin spiritus, which means breath. The words life, breath, energy, and spirit are all represented in one for various cultures. The Sumerians called it Lil. For the Egyptians, it was Ka, the vital spark that left the body at the moment of death. Known to Hindus as Prana, and in Hebrew culture, Ruah. The Greeks called it Pneuma, the Aztecs Iyotl, Zoroastrians Mainyu, the Yoruba Ashe, the Norse Athem, Lung in Tibetan Buddhism, Qi or Qi in Chinese Taoism. It is this same Qi flow that practitioners of acupuncture work with. Qi is the Japanese term for the same living energy. It is known as mana with surprisingly slight variations in meaning throughout the Pacific Islands. In Islam, the breath of life that Allah breathes into the first man is called nafs. For the Inuit of the northern countries, Anirnik, or breath, is the life force that is in all things. The Inuit teach that, while alive, a person had a breath soul connected to Sila, and a free soul created by three goddesses. Only the free soul survived after a person died, usually traveling on to another world and then entering another human to live again. According to Catholic creed, God is in all things and everywhere present. In LDS theology, the life that is in all things is called the light of Christ. An interesting comparison can be made between definitions of spirit by Sir Isaac Newton and Joseph Smith Jr. Newton wrote at the end of his Principia Mathematica concerning a certain most subtle spirit which pervades and lies hid in all gross bodies, by the force and action of which spirit the particles of bodies attract one another at near distances, and cohere. Smith received the following revelation: there is no such thing as immaterial matter. All spirit is matter, but it is more fine or pure, and can only be discerned by purer eyes. In both statements, spirit is defined as subtle and fine, and connected to the gross material. In Amorc, the vital life force is simply called spirit and is taken into the body through the lungs. As for the soul, a corresponding term can also be found among the different cultures and belief systems. Our soul can be compared to a spark that has come from the eternal divine fire. Because the spark sprang from the eternal source, it is as old as divinity itself. In Rosicrucian teachings, human beings are connected to spirit by the soul, which makes spirit and soul two separate concepts. Mormons teach that the union of a spirit with the body makes a soul. The differing use of these words is just semantics. The overarching idea is that there is an infinite energy that pervades all and by which all things are connected. Parts of that energy become entities of their own that grow and evolve. Part of their growth involves taking on physical bodies to gain experience. Multiple incarnations. That there is part of the body which is eternal is an idea humans have believed since ancient times. Upon death, wealthy Egyptians underwent mummification rites to ensure a beneficial afterlife and resurrection. Leaders such as Chinese emperors and Babylonian kings have been buried with riches and servants of various kinds to aid in the next life. In ancient Egypt, death was seen as a transition from one state of existence to another. In the time of Christ, the leading sects of Judaism were the Pharisees, who believed in a soul and reincarnation, and the Sadducees, who did not believe in either. A third group, of which Jesus was likely a part of, was the Essenes, who also taught reincarnation. Jesus himself said that John the Baptist was the Old Testament prophet Elijah. The Catholic Church changed the worldview about what happens to the soul after death. They taught that there is one short life for which you will be judged to spend the rest of eternity in heaven or hell. Sadly, Islam and Protestant churches adopted the same line of thought, and even most Latter-day Saints hold this to be the truth, though the Mormons should not based on their own teachings. In the basic teachings of the LDS Church, humans lived a life as spirits with God before being born in this mortal life. After a physical life and death, the spirit leaves the body to live another life as spirit while waiting to be resurrected in a better physical body. That makes 2 incarnations. The Latin word carne means flesh, so to incarnate means to enter the flesh. Reincarnation is entering the flesh another time. Thus, reincarnation and resurrection have the same meaning. Furthermore, Mormons believe that after resurrection, the body is immortal. The LDS teachings tell us that Adam was part of a trinity that helped organize this world, in which he then lived as an immortal. He later fell and became mortal in order to populate the earth. This leaves us open to speculate whether or not this is a step in progression we must all take in some future life. All Rosicrucian orders teach reincarnation, but the Rosicrucian Fellowship of Southern California gives an in-depth description of the long-term evolution of the soul. They teach that, as life has been evolving on this planet, so too have our souls as they reincarnate through the various life forms and the various cycles of development. Life has progressed to our time of dense materialism, from which we will learn until we shift back toward the more subtle spiritual realms. The soul returns from whence it came, but more evolved and with added experience. The time in between one incarnation and another is an important time for the soul to grow and prepare for the next life, much like sleep at night. In that way, we could say that we die every night and are reborn every day. We sleep for around a third of each 24-hour day, and some theorize that time between lives is proportionate. If someone lives for 75 years, they would rest without a body for about 25 years. H. Spencer Lewis gives a more definite number of 116 years. It is logical that time between lives would vary, just as lives do. Among other occult societies, the teaching of reincarnation is also prevalent. Freemasonry teaches that the soul is immortal, but leaves it to each member to decide what that means. Theosophy and Anthroposophy both describe the soul as progressing through many incarnations. The afterlife of a soul is described in the works of Rudolf Steiner as a time when layers of a past life are shed, such as desires and ego. Max Heindel wrote similarly when talking about 3 heavens through which the soul travels after death. Tibetan Buddhism does as well. The effects of our actions on future lives is taught in Wicca, thus confirming the belief in reincarnation. Allan Kardec was a Frenchman who founded Spiritism. He taught, just as the above groups, that the soul must progress through many incarnations, but not back to a different animal or plant, because that would be retrogression. On his tombstone it reads, "To be born, die, again be reborn, and so progress unceasingly, such is the law." Jesus taught that a man must be born again. Of course, baptism is the symbol of rebirth, but reincarnation is the mystery that we will live again. The mystery schools of Greece, i.e. the Pythagoreans, the Orphic mysteries, and the Eleusinian mysteries, taught the doctrine of metempsychosis, also known as transmigration of the soul. Plato taught that a short while after death, beings choose what type of animal they will inhabit next. He says that Orpheus decided to be a swan after his human life, and some that were birds chose to take on a human form. Thus, metempsychosis is taught as an interspecies form of reincarnation among the animal kingdom. But the Greeks also believed that a well-lived life would lead to a better one, and eventually, with the help of Dionysus, one would become a god. The Alawites are a secretive religion that merged with Shia Islam for safety. Most of the Alawite membership resides in Syria, including the ruling Assad family. Reincarnation and metempsychosis are taught in their teachings. An Alawite may come back as a Christian if they have sinned, but if one became an infidel, they would come back as a different animal. They also teach that God incarnated as the biblical Joshua and the Muslim Ali. The Hare Krishna movement teaches that our desires in this life determine the form we take in the next. For example, if one desired to be seen by others, they may come back as a prominent tree in a plaza. These types of reincarnation do not fit into my idea of how the soul evolves, but I could be wrong. After all, time is not really linear, so we must be experiencing multiple lives in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It is also well known that the particles of our bodies break down and become the building blocks for other life forms, so the spirit that vivifies us may do the same. Brigham Young gave his opinion that the actual bodies of Egyptian mummies would be reanimated by the same spirit that once inhabited them. It sounds like an idea for the next Hollywood zombie movie, but even if that is the case for them, it certainly is not for all of the corpses that have disintegrated and reformed into other things over and over for millennia. Resurrection is the reincarnation of a soul, and the natural occurrence of it is through birth. Apotheosis. Consistently among the various teachings is the concept that we live many lives as we progress to godhood. The process of a human becoming a god is called apotheosis. The Apotheosis of Washington is the name of a painting by Constantino Brumidi in the dome of the United States Capitol building that depicts Washington joining the abode of the gods. The idea is that George lived life well and led a great nation successfully. The next step is watching over the people of this planet with the other gods. Mormon missionaries teach that we are children of God and that we are here to become like Him. Joseph Smith taught that many righteous people have attained godhood, including the Hebrew patriarch Abraham. As mentioned above, Platonism, as well as earlier philosophic and religious teachings of Europe, taught that the end result of our lives on this earth is apotheosis. Buddhism teaches that once we achieve moksha, liberation from the cycle of death and birth, we can choose to be at one with all, come back to earth as a guide for others, or become a god, a deva. Near-death experiences. The idea that no part of me will exist in a couple of years sounds horrible to me. I sincerely hope that the atheists are wrong. Luckily, there is evidence that they are. Every day, thousands of people clinically die and come back to life. That is, according to our current science and technology, all signs of life are gone. They are declared dead. Their vital organs cease to function for a time. Then the autonomic system starts back up. Countless people have come back with messages and descriptions from the other side. In cases of extreme and rapid trauma, such as car accidents, it is common for people to have the sensation of being jolted from their physical body. They then look at their body and surrounding area from above. Cardiac arrest patients often observe what the doctors and nurses are doing in their hospital room. Some other commonalities across the globe that follow are the feeling of being drawn towards a bright light, having a review of the current life flash before the mind's eye, seeing deceased relatives, seeing divine beings, communicating telepathically, and feeling a profound sense of peace. Although these people literally die, the phenomenon is called a near-death experience. Many describe what is happening and being said in and around the room while they are dead. People that want to fight the notion of life beyond the physical argue that these people must still have some brain function for some time after the lungs and heart stop. But documented cases, like Dr. Eben Alexander's, have shown that NDDs can occur while there is no brain activity. After an NDE, atheists believe in God. Religious people tend to relax and identify themselves more as spiritual. Experiencers lose all fear of death, but see the value of life. They also tend to be more loving and accepting of others. We would be wise to do the same, whether we go through an NDE or not.